So the ANC's nomination process has finally come to an end. It closed on Monday. What happens next is that the nominations from the different branches across the country will then be consolidated and you'll get a better picture of what it is that the ANC's branches want. Now, the ANC counts what is called 12 provinces, right? These are the 9 provinces as you know them, so Gauteng, all those provinces, and then it includes its leagues, the 3 leagues, the Veterans, the Women's League, and the Youth League as part of the provincial outlook that it has. So that's how it gets to 12 provinces. All of those have cast their nominations. Interesting outcomes from the different leagues, mind you. So this week we had the Youth League endorsing Dr. Zweli Mkhize. So he's making headway in KZN. I don't think anyone ever had a question that Zweli Mkhize will be delivered onto the ballot via KZN. And I think his chances of making it onto the ballot are quite high. I think he's gonna make it. So he had the youth league also backing him, and then you also then had the Veterans League and the Women's League. Both want to see Cyril Ramaphosa return for a second term. Interestingly enough, these two leagues opted for women as the deputy presidents. However, they wanted different women to fill the post. So while the Youth League wants Paul Mashatile, spokes, who's pretty much running away with this conference, like it's in his hands, many would argue it's his to lose, actually, the way he's consolidated the different provinces behind his name. They're saying that he might be the only name to meet the threshold, but I think leaders like Ronald Lamola are trying their best. We'll only see, really, what happens when those nominations are put together. Now I want to go back to the leagues. The Veterans League and the Women's League differ on who should be deputy president. The Women's League put in Thandi Modisa's name. And if you recall, there was a period where Thandi Modisa's name was being played about and bandied about by people in Ramaphosa's corner. They very quickly abandoned that idea, so the women have resuscitated it. So they've also given up officially. You can say they've given up on Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's hand is also up. It might be up on its own. It might be up with maybe 2 or 3 branches, but it definitely is up. But the Women's League have chosen to go a different way. In 2017, they put all their eggs in one basket, the NDZ basket. It did not work out. So this time around, the women have kind of shifted around. They've put in Thandi Modise as a deputy. You got names like Gwen Ramokgopa also being suggested as potential leaders who should serve in the ANC's top 6. The Veterans League have resuscitated another interesting name, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka. Now, the former deputy president of the country did leave the country for a bit, but most importantly, as far as the ANC's trajectory is concerned, she actually did leave the ANC and join COPE for a while. So when her name came up from the Veterans League, some ANC members said, but she left COPE. We can't have somebody who left the movement, went to join COPE, and came back, and they want to argue that she has not had 10 years of uninterrupted service in the ANC. I'm not sure if that's quite accurate, because COPE goes back to what, 2007 or 08? So I'm not sure if they're accurate in their counting and their numbers, but her name has come up. What's also interesting about the names that the veterans want to see taking over is that people like Joel Nechitenze are also on that list. People saying that this is just nostalgia for the UDF period in the lead up to South Africa's democracy, the breakthrough where there were people organizing and mobilizing locally. That's what people feel about the veterans list. So that should tell you how far that list will go as far as finding expression with ANC members. I have not spoken about Didi Mabuza a lot in these weeks. So I'd like to believe that Didi is the enigma we've made him out to be in the political space, that he might actually be a cat with many, many lives. But how we'll judge that, I assume, is on what happens with the branches. His name is not one that dominated. He did attempt to have a public presence here and there to say he is keen to continue serving. Was it enough? I don't know. And sometimes in the ANC, it doesn't really matter what you do in the media space. It's what you're doing in the dark. It's what you're doing under the table. It's what you're doing way, way, way from the camera lens and the journalists who are asking incessant questions. I was going to say unnecessary, but we're asking very necessary questions. Side note, the part where the ANC suggests to the media that the media must incur costs of using the studio spaces at Nazareth. I don't understand some of these ideas as they find themselves out in the media space. How a governing party can't think thoroughly through an idea like that. I mean, so who must not attend? Who must not cover the ANC? Which constituency does not deserve to see what's happening with your conference? And also, why do you think you're doing us a favor that we want to be there for fun? Stuck at Nasrec for hours on end, and it's going to be hours on end. Those 4 or 5 days of this conference are not 8 hour shifts, they're not 10 hour shifts. Gosh, on some days there are literally 24-hour shifts that you're pulling, and then you're being told you must pay. Mind you, the ANC provides nothing. The infrastructure, the machinery, the cameras, the couches, the chairs, the tables, the internet is not provided for by the ANC. Yet the ANC is telling us about packages. Anyway, that idea died quickly for a reason, because it was a non-starter. It was a daft idea. Should have never found its way out into the media space, let alone out of the mouth of the spokesperson of the ANC. I think also Pule Mabe should have just said, sorry, I made a mistake, and moved right along. That, mind you, might be the Treasurer General of the ANC. So my whole thing about it is, I think Pule was trying to find creative ways to show that if he's elected Treasurer General, he will find creative ways to deal with the financial issues. You know, the ANC is that broke. But that was my takeaway. It's like, why else would the ANC suggest ways for the media to assist in paying the bill for using the venue? Like, we asked to be the hour, never. I want to give you an update on coalitions. Last week I said to you, I live in a Kuruleni, we had no mayor. Here's a quick joke. We have the same mayor we had just before last week. So attempts to replace Tanya Campbell have failed. Talks between the EFF and the ANC again failed. At the heart of this failure in the conversations is not necessarily the negotiations themselves. I'm beginning to understand, and some say I get it wrong from time to time, I'm human, but I'm beginning to understand that while they might find one another, the person that everyone seems to have an issue with is the former mayor of Ekurhuleni. Mzwandile Masina is being pegged by so many people in the ANC, particularly in Gauteng, as being a problem. What you can see if you're observing is that he is on a collision course with the province, the ANC in the province, that is. In fact, as I speak, there was a PEC, a Provincial Executive Committee meeting, and that might change Mzwandile Masina's fate and his standing. This, as conversations are doing the rounds about disbanding that regional executive committee in Ekurhuleni. Remember, that's where the issue of the quarantined votes was. That's where the regional executive was hanging for so many months and almost affected Gauteng's conference because of the unresolved issue of just, 14 votes? So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Masina. More so because Masina has also put his hand up to say he can be Treasurer General of the ANC. He wants to be a national leader, but he's finding himself more and more isolated in his home province. And I'm starting to believe possibly soon, at least sooner or later, might find the same thing happening in his own region in Ekurhuleni. But the NEC is meeting this weekend, so it's having its own unboxing, if you may, where they'll finally consolidate the different nominations and find out who made it onto the ballot. Who does NC branches want to see contesting for leadership? Till next week.